I'm sorry, do you want to wait there?
There you go.
Um, yeah, so this is my friend Hermie. I just met him this past August, actually, at the Catalyst Camp, the first
Yeah,
United States Catalyst Camp. So, and
absolutely.
yeah, so it's just exciting. He's worked with city teams and in the, aren't you in San Francisco area?
Yeah, the San Francisco Bay Area, based in San Jose, which is kind of like the South Bay area, and really the heart of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and so he's been with CityTeam for 23 years. And
Yeah, almost this June will be 24 years. I
yeah,
cannot believe it.
so, and it's just so exciting to hear just all the different demographics that you work with, just having a heart for the poor and all those. So, anyways, please welcome Hermie Smit.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Have any of you on the call have been also to the catalytic camp in Phoenix last year? Okay, Roswell, yeah, you were.
Yeah, not last year, but the year before, right?
Oh, the
Yeah.
year before. Ah, okay. I believe I was at the year before. That one also. I don't know. Did we meet Roswell?
Maybe just briefly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So, Liz, would you like me to share, or what would you like me to do?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. Share what God's put on your heart and just things that you've learned as you've gone through the years with DMM and things you'd like to pass along to us. So I know you have
Absolutely.
a wealth of information, much more than a half an hour's worth. So
Yeah. All right. I'll just jump in, and hey, if you have questions, feel free just to say, hey, ask me. I really don't. We can make this very interactive. Just a little bit about City Team. It's an organization started in 1957, and it started as a Christian ministry, really helping the homeless and helping people overcome addiction. And then, when all the Korean refugees start coming in, they started adding a family service component, helping low-income families, really helping just these refugees kind of like settle in, help them get bank accounts, help them get a housing and navigate through that. And that always our focus is always is meeting people where they're at, meeting their needs, and that leads to opportunities to share Christ with them. And really is to make disciples, is get people into spiritual community. And it's not just about getting people saved, but really get them into spiritual community and have them become disciples and disciple makers. um, I started in 2001. The department that I now am the director of is CityTeam in a neighborhood, and we help low-income families. Um, we, on top of also, we still provide shelter. We help overcome addiction and all of that, and then we also help people lift out of poverty, and that primarily has been in our residential programs. But with City Team in a neighborhood, we started helping low-income families out in the community, and a lot of just Bay Area cost of living is very very high, and so we have this phenomenon. You have the working poor. You have people. There's a lot of immigrants. A lot of people coming from literally since the gold rush. People come to the Bay Area, come to California, and it's about to make money, and and then a lot of times they leave. So it still continues to this day. So there's a lot of movement. There's not a lot of stability. There's not a lot of people that was born and bred here and go multiple generations. Those are very rare. So we get a lot of people from Latin America, and we also get a lot of people from Asia, and these are the people that's struggling. And we partner with a local food bank, and we provide these mobile food pantries, and really taking it to where people live and learn. And we try to serve them when it's really convenient for the majority of the people. And I'll give you just a quick map. Um, so I don't know. Do I have ability to share? I do. All right. So actually, I probably shared the wrong screen. So I'll just share. this real quick. Um, I don't know, is it big enough? Probably if I hit share, it may. So we have, in Santa Clara and San Mateo County, we have, and Alameda County, these three counties, we have 62 mobile pantries. And for these two counties, food bank, they come and drop the food off at our location, and then we take it to these locations. And in Alameda County, we go and pick it up there, and we go take it to low-income apartments, low-income schools, and also to churches. 44% are of these pantries are actually at a church location, and we get to do this because we partner with 50 local churches. And in the past, when David Watson started training us in DMM, um, we we were trying to work with churches that we already were working with, but when we started explaining DMM, we we weren't really able to really solicit partnerships with established churches. So we're like, okay, we just knew we had to kind of give a model. We had to prove this concept that it works. So we kind of did without the support of the local church. And it took us about 3.5 years to figure out how to do this multiplicative disciple making because so much of our spiritual muscle memory was still based on addition. But then it took us about 3 years to figure that out, and then it really started taking off. In 2008 to 2012, it really took off. Not only did it expand here in the Bay Area, where we had probably between work that was started in San Jose and also in San Francisco, we had well over 300 Discovery Bible groups actively working in the Bay, going on in the Bay Area, and many streams have gone beyond 4 generations of multiplication. Um, but then a lot of times we see by the time you get to um, the third generation, it's out of the Bay Area. Sometimes it's out of the country, and because people started taking it back to the country that they are from. Sometimes they share it with WhatsApp, or they share it with just by phone, or they would move back. Sometimes they get deported. Sometimes they leave back. It's too hard to live here. So they go back and they go radio silent for a while. And then we pop up. And then, 3, 4 months later, oh, I started a group there. We started two groups there. And so it really started taking off and much more outside of the Bay Area than really here. So we started doing a lot of coaching, started, even though we didn't start it there, we started traveling and developing leaders, and by about 2015, it was in 15 different countries. We had actively already significant groups, majority in Cuba, Mexico, Central America, some in Peru and Colombia also. But and then in 2017, 2018, we were in Cuba, and this was the second trip I was there, and they started praying for us, and we just felt that, man, we need to refocus on our Jerusalem, on the Bay Area. And then, with the new president came in 2018, um, he kind of commissioned us to really focus on the Bay Area. So we felt like God has already keep your camera. Okay, God has already um, focused us here, but we felt this time around we really want to work with the local church. We realize that if it's really important to have a stable presence in a community to really see community transformation, because we didn't want to just people get in groups, and we want to really see communities be transformed. We want to see the kingdom of heaven come to our city and transform our city. But because of low income communities and since COVID, man, it's also with the affluent community, so many people constantly moving and coming and going. We realize there are some people that kind of like are homeowners, and there are some people and churches, those buildings. Also, the challenge with in the Bay Area with housing, most people live in small homes. Many times you have multiple families living in an apartment. So it's tough to really use a house to meet in. And so really that third space becomes important. And
Mm.
some apartment complexes do have a community room, but many don't. So having partnership with local churches and then having them open up their facility for our disciple making groups have been really, really important, valuable. So that's when we started developing this mobile pantry model and really making it super easy for local churches to serve their low income neighbors. And we changed our strategy a little bit. Instead of having them adopt the whole DMM vision and go through, all the habits trainings and all of that, and then trying them to do everything, they go out, they look for the person's feet, they do the access ministry, they do the disciple making and all of that. We realize that takes a long time, and sometimes it's really challenging. And because our city is so diverse, it wasn't very effective, to tell you the truth. Um, Most of where the openness now is really with the immigrant population, and most of our churches we partner with are not. And so we're like, hey, this church has a heart to serve their neighborhood. Let's collaborate. Let's make it super easy for them to serve their neighbors. And then they just agree they want to reach them, and they're open to doing something different. They're open to open up their facility, and they're also open to allow for disciple makers that is maybe not part of the congregation to leverage those relationships. And and then we can kind of like work with these churches and start to train them and mentor them on how to make disciples that multiply. So that's really that's really what we are focusing on now. And as these pantries are starting, then I'll just highlight what these four phases are. Let me share that real quick. So we have, it starts with the pantries, and then because there is, limitations what you can do with government food. There's a separation of church and state. We also, and clothing is a huge need among low income populations. We do these pop-up clothing closets. And right now we have 20 clothing closets, and this goes on a regular basis, once a month. Families from the pantries on a different time, they get invited to come and get clothing, they get hygiene products, they get some household items also, but that's where follow-up takes place. So that's now where our disciple makers are, connecting with them on a relation base. They start, sharing spiritual snacks. They listen, they start promoting on-ramps to our Vital Connections program and our disciple making program. And it's really Vital Connections. I'll unpack that in a second, but it's kind of like a pre-DBS, and it's facilitated, and but we start sharing testimonies. We look for opportunities to pray, and kind of many people are big need. They're lonely, they're isolated, they're overwhelmed, they feel like um, there's a loneliness pandemic, but they just feel like, man, they are just being beat down and they don't have support. Um, Many come from, if you come from a Hispanic background, you come from a Catholic background. Many are not active in going to mass and active in Catholic Church. Many of the Vietnamese are from a Buddhist background and so forth. So, and we work with Protestant churches. So anything non-Catholic or non-Buddhist is there's a lot of barriers. But because they serve them already at the pantry, rain or shine, these people are happy to see them. They start to develop that trust. And when we come to the pop-ups, it's now more intimate. We get to share, hey, we have a program. We love helping you with the food and with the clothing, but man, we have a program that help people have friendships, have better relationships with their family, with their community, and also with God. And we present it, so we try to minimize the barriers for people to say yes to Jesus. And those religious barriers, you can eliminate them, but to minimize them. and we just address them up front. It's not about changing your religion. It's not about that. It's really about changing your condition. But when they see someone like them sharing their testimony, what God has done in their life, right now, 25% or more every time said yes, say yes. I'll give you an example. We have a pantry here actually at our warehouse, and we did a Christmas pop-up event. And 157 families came through that received toys. They got clothing. They got free haircuts. There's hospitality. We did s'mores. We did games with the kids and all of that. We had several churches that participate with that. So there's hospitality. There's meeting felt needs. And then we had Spanish speaking of our connection people. They did follow up. They shared testimonies. They looked for opportunities to pray. We had a Vietnamese couple, our follow up team. They did the same, and also people in Chinese. We had 115 people said when they hear about vital connections, they said, wow, I need that. They gave their name and their phone number because they want to participate in vital connections. That's a huge amount. I mean, many times we see 30% or more people say yes. So it's really being very intentional. Even when a pantry is at a church parking lot, people don't just come to church. And sometimes just to invite them to church is a step that's too big of a step. So we got to create these bridge programs. And many times with moms, after they drop the kids off from school in the mornings, if they don't work or they have kind of like they do some gigs, 10 a.m., that's a great time for them to meet. If you want to reach the dads, it's probably going to be Sunday or it's going to be in some of the evenings. Sometimes Saturday also, but many work on Saturdays. So you got to figure out, okay, when is the people available? But then you still need somebody that's going to host them and that's going to understand how to facilitate. So we do then, the next step is after they say yes, we do an awareness gathering. And we do multiple of these awareness gatherings where we explain to them, okay, go a little deeper into what is vital connections, kind of like still listen and what it's not, and what are the commitment levels it requires. And as they can ask questions and we address their concerns. We usually this has to be done really well. If it's a Hispanic population, man, there's got to be pan dulce. There's some coffee. Just roll out the red carpet for them. And many, many, many times I hear, man, these people, they treated me like family. I was afraid. I was very hesitant. But when I got there, they treated me they treated me like they know me already from a long time ago. And sometimes, it takes a couple of times. That's also when we discuss, okay, when are most people available? So sometimes you got to look at, okay, here's a group they are available in the morning. So here's a group in the evenings or weekends. And then you need on that, and you also need then a facilitator, somebody that can help them and get them to where they start to engage in the program. They start to read scripture. We need to introduce them to the Bible. We don't do that first day. So we have kind of like a curriculum. And then when they realize, wow, the Bible actually speaks to me and has relevance to me, we give them a Bible if they don't have one, and then teach them how to find scripture and how the Bible is organized, and then how to facilitate this group. It has four components: connecting with God, connecting with self, connecting with my family, and connecting with my community. And it takes about 6 months to complete. And then after the facilitator facilitates a few times, and then they start taking turns to facilitate, and we teach them how to facilitate the group. And it's amazing, man. It's a huge victory once we get people to start reading God's word and they start apply it, and then they start sharing that. Whew, when they start experiencing transformation, that is incredible. And many times they start sharing with others, and then we start involving them also as volunteers in the pop-ups. Sometimes they become volunteering at the pantry, but especially at the pop-up. And they started connecting with families. They start inviting people also. Hey, this church or this group, do you know CityTeam? They can help you with food. They can help you with clothing. They share with their neighbors. But the secret sauce is it's really this container of friendships. They start having that support. They start discovering God. They start helping one another how to apply this. And there's it's not just about doing Bible study. There's a social gathering before, and they start hanging out afterwards. They start watching kids for one another. They start helping and supporting one another. It's really building that community because when we learn about the person of peace, um, and we do find some persons of peace here, but a lot of times that is okay. You work through them. They know a lot of people, and they're going to invite people in their home. But many times there's persons of peace, but they don't know their neighbors because they're not from here. So in a sense, we have to become the first person of peace. We have to kind of be that container that builds now community. And once you establish community and you have the people with hospitality, you got your teachers, you got your shepherds, you got your evangelists, we build those up. Now they start to function, then really that team start to function, and we very intentionally we got to train them and equip them. And then replicate. So when they start, they're now, even before they finish that 6 months, you can see who's kind of the facilitators. You can see who's good at facilitating, and you can see who has a heart for reaching out and so forth. And then we start cast vision for them. It's like, okay, you have other friends that want to join. Here's a table. There's 5 chairs. You sit in one, you fill that up with 4 more. You recruit your people, and you're going to start a gathering there. And so we can kind of help them. And that's how we kind of like really multiply our facilitators. And then sometimes they can meet theirs, like, okay, you can take it there. Sometimes you have people that say, wow, I really need this, but I'm very pregnant right now. I can't come to. It's like, okay, but can you come to my house? Sure, we can come to your house. And it starts spreading there. But to have a place where we can meet using churches, their buildings, really, really helps. Sometimes it's community centers. Um, but really have that safe space available, and that dedicated space is very, very, very helpful. But we have to be intentional at harvesting. Even though people are super interested in God, unless they are invited, they're not going to come to church for the most part. They're not just going to show up. And and we have to minimize those barriers. And I think these bridge programs like Vital Connections, um, it could be Alpha, it could be AA, it could be whatever. There are some churches they just have we partner also with Hispanic church and other, and they have a good disciple making program that's very relational, and they do a cafecito and so forth. Okay, let's promote that then. But then we start working on how to do that so it can multiply. And after the 6 months, we do these graduations, and it's just amazing. Many times they started to really they want to highlight the before and after. And this is when they invite their friends, their family. Um, we usually do this Friday nights because that's when people are available. Husbands and other family members come, and they share the before and after, and it's so powerful. It's just great. And then we talk about next steps, and if they just graduate, um, the goal is to now you become a facilitator for others, and we want the goal is to really launch a team that engages and serve their community. um, then once they do that, we then also take them through a discovering God, the creation to Christ, DBS. And now they get the bigger picture and the big stories of the Bible. and many times they really like that. They many times they start reading even the chapters in between. Um, Many times we've seen baptisms come out of vital connections. They commit their lives to Christ. So soon after that, we do a baptism. We like to bring their whole family on board, and 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 yeah. But our best workers, our best disciple makers, our best evangelists come from the harvest. So our goal is, man, as we you know, how can we get as quickly as possible to that first generation group? And that's why we have so many churches that are doing great work. And I'll I'll share this real quick. We have it's still true, man. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. It's one of the passages we talk in the DMM training, right? And that is still true today, and especially here in the Bay Area. But you know, this was a this was a pantry. This church was doing this pantry at their parking lot. It's a Chinese church, Chinese English church, and they serve a lot of Chinese, but there's a lot of Hispanics, there's a lot of Filipinos, there's a lot of Vietnamese coming through there, and but we were just looking. And Ricardo and I did the survey, and we didn't talk to too many people because. But the Hispanics and the Vietnamese, they were open, and the Filipinos were open to talking with us because they could more of the language. And we just said, hey, if we know these programs are offered in Milpitas, that's where the churches, and we partner with those churches. There's this coalition. And I said, I just offered, it's like, hey, if this program is available, would you participate? And you're not going to offend me if you say no. ESL program, learn to speak better English, reading, and writing. 70% said yes to that. Supporting for those who have lost a loved one, you know, 30% says, wow, they recently lost somebody and they need help with that. You know, divorce recovery and support, 30% said yes. Parenting workshops, 24%. Overcoming bad habits and addiction. They ask, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, maybe you struggle with alcohol or drugs, or maybe it's just anger, maybe it's pornography. People started opening up how, you know, one guy said, yeah, he had surgery, and and then he started getting hooked on opioids, and he's like, man, he's really struggling with that. Others, it's like family members. Others struggle with alcohol, and we had, four people said yes, but it was long conversations how they started opening up and the pain and everything. It's like, wow. But I'm going to last this on spiritual community. When they asked me, what do you mean by that? I said, be part of a group, whether it's a church or a small group, but with others, you learn more about God and how to grow in your relationship. 65% said yes. So there's a huge need, for that. There's a harvest to be harvested, but, you know, it just takes, we need to be very intentional. So to have a bench of people that are trained in DMN, that have that gift and that willingness to go and connect on that spiritual level, and then also be willing to then, once you find those people that said yes, to actually receive them and get them started in the discovery process, and and really walk alongside with them. It takes patience, it takes that regular presence, and to develop them as also the disciple makers. There's a huge opportunity, but that's where I see DMM can really take place. So I know we're out of time, but we need to focus on equipping them people that have that language and that ability and the willingness to be inserted there. And churches are super open to that. There are like so many churches that we don't even partner with. They have already programs that are serving the community, but there's not a lot of time there's a disconnect between the follow up and the immediate needs, the Matthew 25 and Matthew 28. And that's really the opportunity I see that we are meeting now is not working around the church. We want to work with the church. We actually want to work through the church. but without them having to adopt DMM and become a necessarily a full-on DMM church. Sometimes we're planting these DMM churches within a church, but because it's a different language, you know, it's very easy to do that. And then once you get to that first generation group, the harvesters there are actually more effective at multiplying. But we got to get to that first generation. All right. Does that make sense? Any questions? Any comments?
Oh,
Any
this was great.
concerns?
Thanks, Hermie. Yeah, do we have any questions, comments?
Is your Hermie, as you're building those bridges with churches, what does that initial conversation usually look like? Is it like you're calling up and introducing CityTeam and sharing if you can partner, or how does that initial bridge?
Yeah, in the beginning it was kind of like that, but because I know we're unique, so it doesn't apply everywhere. But in the beginning, we kind of had to explain a little bit our mission. We got to sell that, and then, but the secret is out now. We have a waiting list, and actually, we cannot. There's we have to say no to churches because we cannot start pantries, and because the food bank doesn't have the food to really start expand the way we used to. But even if we can do a pantry, they want to partner with us. And sometimes it's like we have this program, we have that program. Can you help us with follow up? Now we're inviting it's kind of like whole coalitions and looking at it's what are you doing already that's outward focus and how can we make full advantage of that? So um, yeah, I think it's just start with a few and then once that is successful it momentum starts happening, and then later on, they start asking you for help. Um, and I think we have to the same with persons of peace. There's churches of peace, pastors of peace. We need to serve them before they. We need to be patient also with them, and for them to start to really adopt this. And I think kind of like a hybrid, they can still continue with that and do some of this work on the side. Sometimes we can train their people to do all of that, but sometimes it's just they're gonna support and bless the work, but allow for disciple makers to operate within. It's almost like missionaries happening or church planters happening. You plant a church within a church. That makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then just the training, we had to adapt our training. It can't be we kind of share the vision, but it has to be very specific to that function. But we need one person that kind of oversees the whole picture to really put the different pieces together. And but then not everybody has to go through the whole DMM training to do this specific function. So um, that also kind of made it easier to work with churches. Carrie, you have a question?
I do actually have a two-part question.
Uh-huh.
How did you become more intentional with recognizing the needs and the barriers of the community?
Yeah, so we just kind of like know we learned this from our DMM work that we've done in the past. What are specifically the barriers among the Hispanic population? We're still learning among the Vietnamese and the Chinese. It's different culture, and but a lot of it is just because we ran into these barriers, and a lot of times, those were blockages. But the needs for us, low income families, that's why CityTeam exists. Um, and then it's just by talking with people, but we're able to get free food, we're able to get clothing donated and things like that. So we make that available. And but people have needs. A lot of it is they're isolated, they're struggling with feeling overwhelmed. They don't have friendships because, I mean, I'm from South Africa. I know it sucks when you're surrounded by a million people and you don't have friends. You have people that know you, they work together, but you're never invited to their house. We never just hang out. There's always, we have a reason. Oh, because we work together. Even when you go to church, man, it's, people don't want to, it's hard to get in community here in the Bay Area. So people are struggling with, so the bar is so low for hospitality. If you show true hospitality and you offer friendship, wow, that's almost a legitimate felt need that is going very unmet. Now I don't know where you guys are from. You got to look at, that's why you got to exegete your community. You got to see what are the needs there, and but I believe when we start meeting people's needs and we do that with love and respect, and that allow for opportunities to then share the gospel and actually get to um, get to invite them to discover God.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Sounds like generosity and hospitality are at the top of what's needed in looking at these things. And yeah, to your point is we can be surrounded by a ton of people and still feel very lonely.
Very lonely, very overwhelmed.
Yeah, and that's
Sometimes they feel like a burden because they came, somebody invited them, and now they showed up. Many times they have kids, and this family is also low income, and they just struggle to. And now they're like, okay, you know, um, you need to launch, you need to kind of like, and it's just it's hard. So in our area with food insecurity is a huge need, double the national average. So just something as basic as food and clothing, man, that opens up all kinds of doors.
Hmm. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I'm hearing some catch things, leverage relationships, show true hospitality, friendships, secret sauces, relationships, and so forth. It's like we're butting up against a cultural stronghold of non-relational, being non-relational. And it's like I'm looking at our situation and actually, how can I train people within our church even to be relational?
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing. It's Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's a big
Yeah.
challenge. So that's why if you have a few, the people in the community, those new disciples, they are much better positioned to be relational, and especially when they experience transformation, they so it's just providing that container for that to take place. And churches are good at doing events, so let's use that core competency that they have. They can do a pantry twice a month, and then but they many times they're not good at, they don't have the language or somebody that's willing to really walk alongside. So that's where we can really look at developing and recruiting someone that is, but they may not have the relationships, but let's leverage the relationships that's already fostered there. And with some, if we insert them well, then you can easily take advantage of that, to get to that first generation group. But you got to get to that first generation, and that's a challenge. But if we can get there, then we can go much faster. All right. Well, hey, I gotta run. I got but yeah, I'd be happy to come back at another time. I hope this was helpful. Um, I did share, I did unpack this some more in the talk that I did. I believe that talk is available on video. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to come back and share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hermie, and we'll be praying for you, okay?
Yeah, was any of you on the prayer meeting this morning that I overslept? Was any of you on that David Hinman facilitated? It's 6 a.m. and I failed to set my alarm. But yeah, please pray for follow up. There's follow up coming on, and just there's also spiritually there's a lot of confusion. Many times as we would say something, the other person perceive, and it just happens too often that this is really spiritual warfare that they try to sow confusion, sow division. So please pray for that. Really appreciate that.
Sounds good. We'll do. All
God
right.
bless you guys. Thank you
Yeah, you
so much.
too. This was great. Thanks so much, Hermie.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
blessings for me.
Bye.